What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to give you a good overview of what actually is happening with Lucid today, because based on the news today, it shouldn't be going down almost about 7.3%. So I want to break it down and go over also the data points and all the other stuff you need to know. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And without further ado, let's get right to it. So when it comes to today, there is a little bit more of a piggybacking from yesterday's news as well about the 637 vehicles as being recalled. And as I said in yesterday's video, 637 is small. It's a small amount. It's not really going to be that big of a deal for Lucid, especially that they are actually handling it in the right way. My problem in yesterday's video that I did bring up was this was known stuff as of July 2022. So the fact that they waited almost a year to address this is a pretty big deal. And similar to today's news as well. So today's news, in theory, whenever there's layoffs or kind of cutting in a company, that's positive stuff. Typically, at least, when it comes down to saving unnecessary costs and so forth, that helps the stock price go up. Similar to what recently happened with, for instance, Google. And anytime EV or whatever announces that there's going to be layoffs, typically it does go up. But in Lucid's case, they're laying off 18%. So definitely that's not just the 2 or 3%. 18% is a big chunk of actual employees and works out to be almost about 1,300 individuals. And that's actually, like I said, a pretty big deal. It goes to show that behind the scenes that is being ill managed. And even based on the Q3 earnings and even Q2 earnings, they did say that they are not going to be laying off any staff. And coincidentally, they actually said that to Adam Jonas. That was one of the questions that he did ask. This one was from the Q3 earnings. So in reality, it does look very bad, the fact that they didn't even give any hint in the Q4 earnings, and both in the Q3 and Q2 earnings, they didn't say anything about layoffs, that they were not going to do layoffs. So in general, I think it just goes to show how amateur Lucid really is behind the scenes. And as I've said in the past, I think their vehicles are bar none. They're absolutely amazing. In general, if they were even half as good as this, like, I wouldn't be in Lucid. I wouldn't even care about Lucid. But their vehicles are absolutely amazing. Just management, in a nice way, they kind of suck. One positive thing about the layoffs, though, that someone did tell me is that this is also being extended to actual executives and VPs. And our good old friend Jeff Curry, turns out he potentially might be getting the axe. And I did actually send a message yesterday when I was informed of this, before this news even came out, that asking if Jeff Curry is still employed there, which most likely I won't anticipate them answering by any means. But Jeff Curry is the VP of Marketing and Communications, and I'm sure some of you might know that I do bring him up occasionally on this channel as far as Lucid and some issues per se, because I think in general their marketing is very crappy for the amazing vehicle that they do have. Surprisingly, a lot of people still do not know about Lucid, and that shouldn't be the case. We have the most aerodynamic car out there, the fastest, the most powerful. It does not make sense at this stage in the game that people haven't heard of Lucid. So in general, I think that's how I interpret at least this news. Of course, there's a lot of different ways how to interpret layoffs. Of course, 18% is a pretty big chunk. So like I said, I think that goes to show that they also were not really planning. So most likely they were also preparing for the tail end of the quarterly results. So of course, in a couple of days, this is when the Q1 earnings are going to conclude. So most likely they are also starting to look at the numbers, and potentially this might be a big red flag to them that they did see. So once again, it kind of cycles back to it being amateur. But when it comes down to the options activity, there is a lot more puts being purchased today. So of course, a little bit more downside is anticipated. So let me know your thoughts on that. As far as secondary market, so a lot of big money is just taking a step back. And clearly, I think it's just more so back-to-back kind of bad things coming out. Big money doesn't necessarily want to touch this. And based on the technicals, it appears as though it will be continuing to trend down, based on that at least. So when it comes to the dark pool, I'll give you guys a quick overview of what that is saying. So dark pool is a little bit more active, and dark pool is very much linked to shorting. So I'll give you guys a quick update as far as what is happening with shorts. So short score is currently 85. 5, utilization is 100%. As far as what shorts are doing today, they are in fact returning 685,000 shares. So that is a grand total of 144.68 million shares being shorted. Then that works out to be 22.57% of the free float. And looking at the cost to borrow average, it is at 14.88, so fairly flat. You still do see that cost to borrow minimum being 0.35%. So there is a broker out there really trying to incentivize shorting with Lucid. So let me know your thoughts on that. So like I said, I think the fact is that people and even shorts are anticipating that this is a little bit more of a overreaction because, like I said, layoffs isn't that big of a deal. The actual recall yesterday, this is a small amount, and in general, they've handled it. So I think at this stage in the game, it's two back-to-back pieces of news, that small pieces of news, just Lucid didn't handle both of them appropriately. My thoughts, of course, my own thoughts. But when it comes down to the actual technicals, it is below a lot of the pivotal moving averages right now, as you can see right here. And it did unfortunately fail to stay in the higher percentile of the Bollinger Band. So today is causing it to stay in this range. And as of right now, based on this, the fib levels, it is currently trading between the S2 and the S1, which in general is fairly good. A lot of other growth stocks are between the S3 and the S2. So at least on that front, it's doing fairly well. The next big point to really watch for is 704. So that might be the next point it does bounce off of, but keep in mind on Thursday there is GDP numbers and on Friday there is PCE. So both of which could be positive, negative, that might be able to take it below this S2 or potentially above this S1 if it is good, of course. And when it comes down to the two data points that I like to look at, number of retail investors are getting out today. Clearly just had enough of the actual back-to-back news that maybe they don't like. For instance, stochastic is currently at 56. No defined trend, so the bullish trend is went away, unfortunately. And like I mentioned in yesterday's video, if it was to continue up to around the 56, potentially or even higher, this is where it might consolidate a little bit more. So I think in general, the news that did come out today is just also taking advantage of the current technicals. So let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments below. Like I mentioned, next point to really watch for is 704, and then also GDP numbers coming out on Thursday. So let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comments below as well. What is your take on this layoff? Because layoffs, like I mentioned, isn't that big of a deal. Typically, it's a fairly positive thing for the company, but 18% is pretty significant. And over and above that, it's a little bit late to the game, especially they've already said in previous earnings that they're not going to be laying off any staff. So kind of contradictory to their words. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. If you do like my Lucid content and want to support the channel, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. One final thing I just wanted to share with you. There is a good promo with moomoo only up until March 31st. And if you click on the link in the description below or the comments, sign up for a free account, you get one free stock. Each stock is valued up to $2,000, so make sure you guys take advantage of that for the last couple days that you can. And without further ado, appreciate you guys watching. Let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.